ethos. It is an attempt to hunt and to find elements of mystification or mythologizing or whatever, and thereby, if you like, reconceptualize or move from a concept that has been contaminated, as it were, by mythos traces or elements. And so I was thinking about existence and essence. So Plato invokes arguably essence or pre-Socratics, and until Sartre, as it were, essence grows and drives arguably the mainly epistemological, but the attempt at truth, let's put it like that, because philosophy, speaking of definitions, I would put a very simple, I'm not the first, of course, the very simple definition of what philosophy is, and it is, of course, the pursuit of truth. And as essence carries truth, or is the main carrier of truth, what happens is that it begins to reveal side effects or hidden aspects of it. Because, of course, when you focus so much and so many people and over so much articulation on an idea, you begin to uncover all sorts of hidden layers that were missed, arguably, before. So in historical terms or method terms, essence is replaced, as it were, or Sartre, I give him the credit for it, is replaced by existence because it was found to carry too many traces of mystification, if that's the right word. In other words, it veered away from truth. It acquired, as I see it, wishful thinking or human projection into what was, and that's why it migrated from being the essence of things to the way Sartre ends up using it, because it starts as that which is stripped of human projection, if I can use this term, and it ends up being the carrier of human projection. And so Sartre says that won't do because I'm after truth. He takes it from Nietzsche and so on, that absolutes are contaminated by massive cultural, religious, collective, social, whatever, disease, endless such things that twisted or bent or sickened the spirit. And the reason he goes to particulars is not because he's anti-universals or anti-absolutes per se, but because he reads philosophy well and he sees it as philosophy itself has veered away from truth. And the very carrier of truth before, the absolute, which was ultimately only a method hypothesis, no longer will do. And I think I understand, therefore, Nietzsche and Sartre in process terms, not as being against absolutes, but being against what they have become. And what they have become is, of course, inevitable because humans are humans and humans do philosophy. And humans forever will put their fears and their aspirations and their defenses and so on into a concept. And over 2,000 years, they will manage, as I gave an example before, to take it away from what it was meant to do, namely to cleanse the concept from human projection, as I put it for now. So the time has come or does come eventually to reconceptualization. Namely, what stands for truth now is not what stood for truth before. Truth remaining constant. So the shift from essence to existence is a return to truth, no less, and an exposure of essence as having betrayed truth. And existence as something with Heideggerian return to physics and so on. It's something that will cleanse or will get rid of excess logos or logos being divorced from physics. And by returning logos to physics and by returning to the body, we shall again pick up the torch of truth, because by now logos, or essence in more precise terms, has dropped it. The torch of it is no longer a carrier of the torch of truth, but it has become a carrier of the torch of mythos, as it were. It's not as simple as that, but I look at it in terms of what is the question, or what is it? Why do they want existence? And I argue not per se, not because existence is what they are saying, although most people take it like that, but because they try to reconnect with truth. They try to find something that will enable people, or enable philosophy, or enable concepts not to be strong, to stand on in their own right and protect themselves from this endless anthropomorphizing of nature, of universe, of the very idea of concepts. Are you with me?
I think so, Joel.
Roy, with me.
Yeah, but I want more, Joel. that opens up the topic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, I mean, fair enough. Everyone is trying to clear away the clutter, previous generations. I mean, one question would be that fine, but that's staying, if you like, it keeps it within the canon. It's like taking on my forebears, Why not? And of course, everyone does this in some way, form or another. Why not just go back to the Greeks?
Because, well, they do. As you know, they always do. Nietzsche very famously, very, colorfully, but they always do. Any attempt to take on, in some ways, invokes elements that, if you like, pre-philosophical, in order to then say to philosophers, look, you veered away. So there is a problem. The problem is that while philosophy itself is a correction of the Greeks, it's a paradox. Greeks are then invoked as a correction to philosophy. And so be it. I mean, okay, philosophy comes from this wonderful nation or aggregation of polis, or it doesn't matter. But yes, philosophers lose their nerve and rightly so, nerves in philosophy in itself. And they, as you put it, I would resist it, but as you put it, they go, as it were, outside philosophy or pre-philosophy, namely the Greeks. Or unless you meant only Plato and Aristotle, but I took you to mean Homer and so on. Maybe I heard you too.
I didn't include mythos, if you like.
All right. So
the biggest move seems to be, one of the biggest moves is to go to before the pre-Socratics.
Yes.
It's almost, I mean, I can understand why Nietzsche did it, from what one knows about him and his antecedents and so on. But he really made such a big jump, such a colorful jump.
Yes.
Out of the frying pan, but almost literally into the fire.
I mean, to me, as you know, and by all means, I want to be challenged, and I am challenged nowadays, right, left, and center. But to me, it's very simple. Philosophy is, as I said before, a liberation of man at the time, but human, from itself. It sounds, of course, strange to say that. How can you liberate something from itself? Unless you realize that through consciousness and through so-called excess, humans are, if you like, secreting machines, or call it what you like, and they end up covering themselves or adding layers upon layers to themselves and begin to move away from themselves into the stratosphere, which in my terms is merely society. In other words, humans cannot remain. It is a funny or wonderful or colorful or whatever thing that happens to humans, that they are being seduced, or they are being pulled, or they are being called to endless things, and before they know it, they respond. And as they respond, they are not careful enough. In other words, their need or their virtue or their generosity or whatever to respond involves, I hesitate to say the word, but a betrayal of themselves. Because I still see their generosity of response, or if you like, altruism, which I, unlike Darwin or whoever, I see the problem to be altruism, not to be selfishness. It is precisely because they love and because they want to belong, and they want to please, and they want to be loved, and they want to, sort of, they are prepared to die, as it were, speaking of death, for the sake of ideas, or for the sake of endless invitations of all sorts, not necessarily literally to die, but to die intellectually, or to die existentially, or to die authentically, because what calls them is big and has always been. And maybe it's a paradox in human nature that it always oscillates between responding to itself and responding to that which calls, or that which asks, or that which loves, or however you put it. And human beings, in my opinion, it makes them even more wonderful, but it creates a peril, a risk, a danger, that they veer too much in either direction, if you like. If you don't respond, you sort of die or wither. But if you respond too much, you become non-authentic, or you become enslaved, or you become easy sheep or flock, or easy follower, or a cult member, or you are drafted to a cause of anything. And of course, I come from communism and so on, but it's so wonderful in some ways to see how people are prepared to embrace a big idea, how they are capable of grasping it in the midst of their existence, and respond to it in such a big way that they will reorientate themselves totally towards it. And as they so do, they reorientate themselves, as it were, it's all language in a sense, away from themselves. Because communism is an easy thing to see. It says to people, I communism, it's an idea. I communism represent a bigger idea than you. And therefore you becomes means to an end. I am the end, not you. Anyway, all sorts of ideas like that. So, however, and not however, so before we go into whether we go back to the Greeks, it seems to me it's going to be there forever. Philosophy opens up, as it were, a can of worms. I don't look at it as a can of worms. in the sense that the more humans open up or aspire or become aware or become intellectual or become or question things, the more they will stumble across all sorts of invocation, all sorts of exhortation, call it what you like, and it will pull them. Also, they have in themselves anyway, that they search for, well, maybe it's the same thing. They search for meaning for their life or purpose for their lives, or they search for identity for themselves, or they search for, saliency amongst their fellow human beings, and conversely into belongingness along with their fellow human beings. All sorts of contradictions there that I don't want to say most because Mary is listening, but I would say in most people's lives, they are led astray. But okay, I will say in some people's lives, they are led astray. And so philosophy to me is a wonderful thing because it points at it. And how does it point at it? By holding truth constant. It is saying, you know what, nothing, it's just an arbitrary thing in a sense. It says nothing is bigger than truth, not communism and not capitalism and not yourself and not the person you love and not this and not that. Anything under the sun is transient or changeable or interchangeable or will reveal itself. In other words, it's not a constant. The only constant there is truth. And what does that mean? Not yet that it can be defined in and of itself, but it can be defined as the only constant thing there is. Now that is a definition, but people want content definition. Because I hold to method definition. In other words, I deliberately don't define truth because constants in a sense, there are, 7 constants in did you know that in the cosmos? It's ratios that Dennis used to talk to us about. It's all sorts of ratios between gravity and this, between speed of light. I don't know. I read a book that's identified by some, what's his name? Not astronomer. Yes, an astronomer or something that. Anyway, doesn't matter all these books that I read. But so that is the definition of philosophy. In other words, that's the underlying question or compass by which one philosopher criticizes another. In other words, when they criticize, it's not that they disagree, it's that they accuse, let's put it like that accuse them of having veered away from truth for the sake of their ideas. They fell in love with their ideas. Kant builds a wonderful edifice. But one thing that then Hegel begins, and then Nietzsche, if you like, completes or takes it here, is that they say, but you put it ahead of truth. And you are not wrong. It's not even being right or wrong, and it's not like science. It's not like that he is proved to be wrong, because the only accusation is not that he's wrong, is that it made it a constant. In other words, it's hubris. In other words, truth is God. There is nothing above truth, nothing that you can say definition-wise or content-wise. Let's say the pure reason. To elevate pure reason over truth is hubris. To elevate power, a la Nietzsche, I suppose, over truth is hubris. To elevate even existence is hubris. So, however, before we go there, I feel there is a first move which always needs to be commended and applauded, namely that Sartre invokes existence, obviously following Nietzsche and Heidegger, but invokes existence because essence is accused of hubris, because essence has grown too big for its boots. Is that what you say? And therefore it needs to be dethroned. And any excuse will do to dethrone essence, even to invoke in vain the name of something else. It doesn't matter, because it's method. The existence is then in the first order, is invoked in order to dethrone essence. It's more important to destroy, although it's called constructive demolition, but it's more important to destroy than to build. Build, go.
A challenge. When you say essence is truth, wouldn't essence more equate with reality?
Was truth, not was truth, was used to always means to an end, was used to advance truth. It was always a method idea.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mary's asking, go on.
Essence, just say it again. Essence was used to advance truth.
Yes. You know, I'll give you an example. The way I hear essence, and that's what I was trying to say, is in contrast to appearance.
Yes.
So in Plato, arguably, in an attempt to dethrone appearance, you can't oppose it with truth, because truth is of a different order. Call it meta concept, I don't know what. It's a constant. So a concept has to be coined to dethrone appearance, because appearance is seductive and it's empirical and it's convention and it enters into morality. You know, even to this day, justice has to be seen. Never mind done, it has to be seen. And so appearance is very pervasive. It's very, it goes to the heart of culture. Appearance, some people would argue it's all. You know, the Jews, funny Jews, they disliked the Greeks on one account, beauty, because they suspected appearance. They loved the Greeks. Plato is adored by the Jews. But the Greeks as a culture was suspect of appearance. Anyway, that's another idea. So in order...
At last, we are talking about the subject I thought we were going to be talking about from the beginning, and we've only just reached it in my book.
Which is?
I don't know what we've been talking about, except other people, other philosophers for the last hour. We haven't even started to think about essence and what Dennis wanted to talk about. Or have I missed it all? I don't know.
Mary, you are so wonderful, and don't take it as patronizing.
Isn't it essence and what were the two things? Existence. It's the what it is and that it is, isn't it?
You could put it like that. You could. But
to start with, instead of a
definition
string of what Nietzsche said to somebody, I don't know.
But
where does it get you? I want to know how I'm supposed to make these discussions meaningful.
Well, Mary,
sorry. I hear Mary is saying what we've been saying nearly from the beginning is an elaboration of
other people's views on
other people's views, bringing them to bear, comparing them, and so on. Whereas originally we could have said that we could have given this definition and we were there already, something like that. Is that right?
Well, I thought as a group we wanted to talk as people ourselves, not just quote other people's views and sort of weigh them up. What do you think? What do you think, Dennis? I don't want to know what Nietzsche thought. I want to know what you think, and I want to know what you really think, Joe, behind all these
Oh, first of all, if you don't hear through what I say, what I think, then I could either say humbly that I don't express myself clearly, or I could say that you don't listen carefully. I only, in fact, if any accusation comes my way, Mary, is the opposite of yours. All these people, and rightly so, they say, Joel, what you say is only what you think. That's the accusation against me.
No.
You don't answer it enough in other philosophers, they say. And I speak in the same way to them as I speak to you. I'm not by that saying that they are right and you are wrong. But anyway, never mind me. I want just to say something simple, Mary. That what you said was correct, but incomplete, as ever. Namely, essence was that it is, and migrated into what it is, as you put it. I'll use your words. And so has any concept under the sun. In other words, to put it in your terms, the problem of philosophy, I'm telling you what I think, the problem of philosophy is that any concept under the sun moves from that it is to what it is. Any concept. Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do with that? Define the very idea of concept?
Even truth? Not a concept.
Since you want me to say what I think, I say it in a very provocative way, and I'm afraid. Oh, Jenny Thomas is asking, is the group on, Dennis?
Yeah, I'll invite her in. I'll get her in.
Anyone on the call?
Oh, here she is.
She here or not?
Hello.
There is.
Yeah,
Jenny, where have you been?
I took Layla to South Shields and I was wanting to try and access it on the journey, but I had no data. And then when I got back, I was logged out of my account and I had to rechange my password to get back in.
Very enterprising. Yes.
Yeah. The how thing.
Mary threw the gauntlet, not for the first time, or a gauntlet, on the floor, saying, why do you not talk about yourselves? And I want you not to tell me about Nietzsche and all that. I want you to tell me what you think. That's just 5 minutes ago. Mary challenged us all, accusing us for an hour of elaborating and talking around A, what we think, and B, the very two words that Dennis anchored our discussion today, namely existence and essence.
Yeah.
So we are now recovering from the death knell that Mary inflicted on us.
Mary was doing then what Sartre was doing, and
Yes.
Nietzsche, and so on and so on. They were all saying, why are you covering up?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Mary, I'll be too clever by half. You invite us, and it's wonderful, into the very paradox of, if you like, of philosophy. Namely, the more you try to speak for yourself, the more you cover up. And the more arguably, the more you rely on philosophers, of course, do it sincerely, genuinely, and to some extent skillfully. The more you weave them into yourself, the more likely you are to uncover yourself. Mm-hmm. A paradox.
Well, no, I go with that, but I didn't find that the quotations from the philosophers that you mentioned seem to be on the subject we were trying to discuss. I couldn't link anything to what Dennis had wanted to discuss.
Yeah.
Maybe it's my I'm sure that, you know, it's my inadequacies or something, but I just think there is no point me sitting here.
No.
I don't get anywhere in these groups.
No, Mary, we are here, if you allow us, at least I feel like that about you. We are here to challenge you so profoundly that whatever you say, you will end up saying the opposite. Namely, the only purpose of you being with us is to realize that what, I don't mean it in a flippant way, but to realize that what you just said now has to be destroyed. I use strong word. I'll explain, okay? But by all means, fight against me. Don't leave and don't allow me. It's very simple. Or one simple idea. Context precedes text. In order for you to hear sensible words about existence and essence, the rubble, or I wouldn't even put it at the rubble, the context within which these two ideas emerge have to be understood, and without them, you will end up holding on to chimera. The only reason these two words come together, and the only reason Sartre says what he says, and the only reason anyone who critiques Sartre might say the opposite and so on, is because there is the wider philosophical context that maybe I failed, but I tried to do my best to highlight before, or as a prerequisite, to talk, before we talk about existence and essence. There is no point starting from a definition of existence and essence if you don't understand why they are invoked in the first place and what they occupy in terms of process or dynamics, not in and of themselves, because they don't exist in and of themselves. Somebody can bridge between me and Mary if I fail.
I got a little bit distracted, sorry, because Abby came in, so I've missed the last little bit, so I can't. I'm irritated that I didn't hear.
No, Jenny, I said that what existence is for existentialism, essence was for classical philosophy. It fulfilled the same role, and over 2,000 years or so, it has flipped over to the other side, which necessitated existence to do to it what it did to something else. Let's call it appearance.
I can't follow that.
Essence, it's maths. Essence was to appearance what existence is to essence.
But
Right,
I need
essence,
to write this down.
right, essence is to appearance what existence is to essence.
Yes, it's trigonometry, or how do you call it, algebra?
Trigonometry. I need to write it down.
It's just two comparisons. That's all.
Yes.
So you talked, right, so if I've got this thing in my head about the cave again. So we're talking about the divided line ultimately. Somewhere on that line, from the shadows on the wall to enlightenment at the other end, there's a ratio, right? From what I remember, the divided line has a couple of ratios on it. Doing it mathematically. So appearances to, say that again, Joel. Appearances to essence
to appearance, what existence is to essence.
Right, one level up then, yeah.
Yeah. Appearance grew beyond its boots, and essence kicked it away and started from scratch, or from what was covered, arguably, before. Existence comes 2,000 years later and says to essence, you have grown, I don't know if that's the right analogy or metaphor, you have become multi-layered, you have become too complex, you have come to include layers of culture and God and religion and morality and whatever, you cease, or you became appearance. You now occupy in our lives the role that appearance occupied in the Greeks' lives, namely you deceive. You take us away from ourselves, or you take us away from life, or you take us away from truth. In the same way, appearance, it's process versus content. Before, essence was the upstart, the new kid on the block, the one who could rightly claim by virtue of youth or whatever, I, or Dionysian, I represent that which is hidden. You represent the shallow, the superficial, the contaminated. So I am going to help you people to kick the old guy for the sake of the new. After, go on.
That doesn't do enough, does it? Yeah, you can say that obfuscation or overlay of dust and muck accumulate around anything when it's been standing there long enough. But the method, what we want surely is the method, not the replacing of a fresh object so it can slowly get covered up. It's only relevant. Existence and essence are only of any use if they operate as method, taking us to truth.
Well,
Their method, their usage, their insightfulness and whatever, whether they lift the lid on everything. It's not just that they do cover things up; it's the way they've failed to operate, isn't it? Not just that they obscure in themselves. We want to know what they do anyway regarding truth.
but they no longer do.
That they no longer do, but we've not gone to what they no longer do or can do. We just said they cover up, and then something else replaces something that covers up, which is fine, but it's just a very first move.
What do you mean? It's in the name. Remember, the fulcrum is, or at least my view, is the truth is held constant, and as it were, existence says to essence, you have, as it were, you have veered away from truth. As Mary puts it, you focus on what? And you forgot that. I'm happy to use this way of looking at things. And it says, it doesn't yet say, I can do it. In a sense, it simply says, you don't. And that is method. In other words, it is the carrier of method towards, I mean, it sounds funny that towards renewal, towards rejuvenation, to all these phrases. But it is truth that gives it the audacity or the strength or the anchor or the compass to do it. It doesn't do it in its own name. It doesn't say, I hold it. It simply says, I think, or I am inspired, or I hold truth supreme. And for now, that helps me not to fall in the way you guys have fallen. I'm trying to make it colorful.
I agree. No, I agree. If we were to talk about essence and existence as methods, I think it would be more revealing. We're taking them almost as not objects, as something transcendent in them, absolute idea rather than absolute as a method.
Are they wet? No.
All right, Jenny's vanished, I think. No, she's back.
So we,
Right. We've got a bit of a lull, Roy.
Sorry?
Mention your book. Because we're on YouTube and we've got an audience.
It's not out yet.
No, what about the previous one?
What, The Thinking
The
Body?
Thinking Body, yeah.
Well, that in a way is saying that reflection is not a simple object. It can actually go wrong. It can not do its job, and it can become unanchored. And so the body is the anchor to properly to use the mind or thinking. But where would that fit here? I suppose in the way we're discussing. It would move us away from simple definition to maybe to what Joel says about one thing covering up another, and each of these two seemingly different things are only two methods anyway, methods towards. They're not just cover-ups, they're methods towards, let's say, truth.
All right, that's fair. I had while you guys were talking, I had this kind of Pythagorean triangle in my head because Joel mentioned the triangle earlier on. So I kind of got this, and then the divided line's a ratio. So then I thought the divided line might be some kind of Pythagorean triangle as well, which takes us completely off topic, and I've got nothing to add because I hadn't really thought it through. It was just in my head. But getting back to existence and essence briefly, because we've been going 40 minutes, so we've got about 20 minutes if you want to keep going for the 2 hour mark.
Are we still on?
Yeah, we're still on. I'm recording it.
Oh, have you been recording all the time?
Well, I switched it off, and then Joel started. I think words started coming out of Joel's mouth again, so I switched it back on again.
Oh, I see.
But in theory, we could go 40 minutes and then stop, or we can keep going to the hour mark if you want.
Well, I think that's my suggestion, that we be guided by Mary. I think Mary possibly speaks for the viewers of YouTube, and she maybe is right to point out that what comes across is what she says, rather than what they or she expected to occur in today's meeting. And she, as I said to Jenny, she was hoping for two things: A, that we talk for ourselves, and B, that we talk for existence and essence in and of themselves, I suppose, rather than the big contextualization or outlay of the history of philosophy. And that's another approach. It is possible, but that simply means to deliver a lecture on existentialism. That is what Mary, in my opinion, what you want, you can get in any existentialist tome, because they tell you exactly that. That's why they come up with this formula. They tell you that essence is what, as you put it, and existence is that. And the whole, there I put the whole body of work of existentialism answers, as I see it, your question. And we are not here to be an existentialist cafe, a la Paul Vaughan and Mike Kozinski. Are we, Jenny?
He's been promoted.
I wonder if he's tuning in right now.
He's been promoted. He's now an admin.
Well, all those who carry scalps are promoted. It's always has been the case. The more scalps on your belt, the more chief you become. So Mary, I don't know, by all means challenge, but what you want is the existentialist position.
I don't want anything except to understand what you were trying to say, all of you. It didn't seem to me to be anything to do with the subject that I thought we were going to be talking about today. Maybe I just missed it. I don't know. You think
Look,
you were getting any kind of enlightenment about the difference between essence and existence? Is that what you wanted from it? What were you hoping for?
who are you asking?
I'm asking Dennis.
I was just using it as a starting point for a discussion. So, because it's so difficult to pin these guys down with any kind of definition at all, at least start with that as something that was an aim.
Oh, right. You
then-
don't mind that we didn't discuss that
No,
they into
because
something.
it's almost impossible to pin them down to get them to say anything that's a definition of anything anyway. So, but at least if that's the title of this discussion, they can't avoid it.
Okay.
So,
Right, well, perhaps I just had a different idea about what.
no, it's fine. Everybody brings their own. As I said, everybody brings their own version of what a conversation about definitions is. It's all good because it's just the first one. We're working this out as we go along anyway.
Yeah.
And also try and bring some of it together. If someone speaks about the canon of philosophy and says this and that's on the basis of it, it can be said they are talking from themselves, that they've done an assimilation job on, say, 5 big names, but they've done it. So they are speaking for themselves, even if through others, seemingly.
It's just borrowing other people's language, I think, is all we're really doing with all that stuff. It's just like, if I can't articulate what I want to say, and somebody else has got pretty close to it, I can borrow their language and slightly adjust it.
Yeah.
And then it becomes my version becomes like a slightly warmed up version of what, I don't know, what whoever said, Heidegger usually with me.
We're getting other people to speak for us in a way.
Yeah.
Is anyone able to quickly bring me up to speed on where we're at? I'm just trying to get an end discussion.
No
I will.
question. I haven't got a clue where we're at, mate. I haven't got a clue where we're at, but I know where we started from, and I know, roughly speaking, where we went in between.
I know it was existence and essence was the topic.
Yeah, it's going to be on YouTube, so if you want to watch it, you can catch up on what was said.
Well, no, but then I would.
I'll tell you in half a minute, Mike.
Okay.
All we said, in a sense, was that existence to essence is equivalent for what essence in Greek philosophy was to appearance.
Okay.
Do you follow that? Essence was invoked, arguably, by Plato in order to debunk or expose or critique appearance. And existence fulfills the same role with regards to essence, which over the previous 26 centuries has become as fat as appearance was at the time when it was lean.
Do you realize what you're saying, Joel? You're saying that philosophy is a clearing away of mythos, and then eventually philosophy gets so covered with dust, mythos needs to come back to replace philosophy.
I'm not saying that. People fall into it.
No, that pithy summation says that.
Yeah, I know. But Mary, I wanted to use you as an analogy. Am I allowed?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel you're asking from a definition from within, and you accuse us for offering a definition from without, as it were. Namely, you think that Mary is a thing in and of itself. Is that right? And we say what you do for Steve, Roy does for you. In other words, Roy is your Mary. And it becomes a very interesting idea that that you can only be a Mary for another, and Roy tries to be your Mary, thereby transforming Mary to being Steve.
Mm.
See that.
Mm.
Yeah, role wise, yeah.
Yeah.
Role-wise. And
Yeah.
that becomes far more interesting than a definition from within.
This is the essence.
Yeah, that's like when
Translate-
I say, like, with me and Joel, when we talk, it's clear you like sort of, I'm the questioner, but like with other people, I'm the one who gives the answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who am I? Who is Jenny? Who are you? How can we answer your quest to talk about existence and essence when essence in one context is existence, in another context is appearance?
So the whole thing's pointless, is it?
You're
No.
to the
You-
relational, they're relationships.
Yeah.
In other words, it's ratio.
The what? Ratio. Yeah.
It's relationship is ratio, which takes us to the divided line and the cave analogy as well.
Yes. So, Mary, I don't mean to be brutal, but your invocation is pointless.
What's the invocation?
Yeah, what is an invocation?
That there is such a thing as essence or existence in themselves, content, their narrative, the narrative of existence and essence, which in a sense is prone to the existentialist appropriation of it, because the existentialists gave essence a bad name, and it's wonderful. I'm nothing against it, and gave existence, as it were, sexy or seductive or good or whatever name. And so Mary wants us to explain, I think, maybe I read into it, what is essence that is so bad, and what is it about existence that is so good, that is so sexy, that it's a battle cry for generations of young people, including at the Existential Cafe. It's so ridiculous, but Mary wants, because you can't have it, Mary. That's the problem of ideology. You can't have what you want because it has been appropriated. It is used now for a doctrine. So you can either have what they say, which is the official, by now, dictionary definition. There is no neutrality in the matter. It's so powerful that it has come to mean what they want it to mean. And who can resist that? They will eject you out of their forum.
So here's the thing: should we make an attempt to do the same discussion next week without referring to Plato or Aristotle or anybody, and just do it for ourselves? But with the same words?
Said.
Yeah.
Dennis said.
No, look, shall we give that a try? Should we start with that next week, and then at least
I might have to speak through you, Dennis, though.
well,
I won't speak for myself, but I'll quote you.
right?
Dennis,
Okay. Well, it means we've got the same discussion, but from a slightly different perspective next week. That's what I'm trying to get at.
You mean the same topic or another?
No, might as well stick with the same topic, because we're never going to actually get to a definition anyway, probably. So the topic can be anything. If you want to give it a go next week, because we're just about to we're coming up to the 2 hour mark, so I thought I'd wrap up a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Are you saying that we end at 4 rather than 5?
Yeah.
Oh, it wasn't clear to me.
Right, no, I put it down. I did put an event on the forum as 2 hours, but you're used to 3 hour groups, Joel. That's what it is.
Yeah. So are we not allowed to continue now?
Yeah, we can carry on, but I don't want to put 3 hours on YouTube in one block, so I'm just going to stop the recording, and then we can start again if you want to.
You have to be on.
Okay.